Well, the temperatures have finally started to warm up and things are starting to pop. So welcome to our first garden tour of 2025. Hi, it's Steph, and today we're going to start the tour here by our shed with our beautiful Dr. Merrill Magnolia. This is our first tree to bloom in spring, and it has these large, beautiful white blooms, and it is so fragrant. And because the tree is getting more mature, it seems as though we had 2 flushes of blooms this year. Some of the buds were a little ahead of others, so it had its first initial flush, maybe the first week of April, and then a little bit after that, we started seeing even more blooms. So it's been really great to see this tree hold on to blooms as long as it has this year. And you can see that all the petals are falling now and looking like confetti on our flower bed and on our lawn. And the daffodils that I planted last year are getting ready to bloom and looking really pretty. And the tulips that I had planted a couple of seasons ago, so not this past fall, the one before that, last year they bloomed beautifully, but you can see that this year I only have maybe 6 or 7 tulips that have come back. And so that is the thing with tulips. They are not always reliably perennial. There are very few varieties that can come back for years. Typically the Darwin reds and yellows and some of the ballerina tulips, but in general they have to be treated as annuals. So this year I will be taking out all of those bulbs and starting fresh next fall. My hyacinths are also blooming and are so fragrant. I love them. I am going to plant these in the landscape because they can come back as perennial. And then the tulips are starting to push out and should be blooming soon. I did a lasagna method on these where I put the tulip bulbs at the bottom, the hyacinth bulbs on top, so that we'll have succession blooming. And my window boxes have some tulips in them, and they are also starting to put on some height and should be blooming pretty soon. This one's already starting to color up. This side gets a little bit more sun than that side, so that is why these are starting to already get a little bit pink. And you can see here too, I had a beautiful drift of tulips last year. Again, only about 6 to 8 tulips have come back. So that's always a bummer, but I'm happy to have even just a few. And right here on this patio, we have our hedge of little lime hydrangeas that have been pruned, fertilized, and they are ready for the season. They're already pushing out their buds with some green growth, which is great. And let me show you this bamboo that we planted in our corn and steel planters last season. This is Fregesia rufa bamboo. It is a clumping type of bamboo, which is supposed to be less invasive than the running varieties. But I didn't want to take any chances, so I did plant it in a planter to be on the safe side. And it made it all through the winter. So I think it's safe to say that here in our zone 6B, 7A, it is evergreen. And it's already starting to push out some new growth. You can see here is one example. Okay, there's some new leaves there. And even in the corner here, look at this. This is all new growth coming from the base of the plant. But our Japanese maples in pots are also starting to leaf out, which is really exciting. This is our dancing peacock, which has the most beautiful large foliage and the brightest red color in the fall. It gets all of its earrings this time of year. These are the somaras, the official name, but we call them earrings for fun. And these 2 corn and steel planters that I have here by the side of the steps, look at this. The heuchera and the Japanese forest grass, the Hakana Kloa, this is the all gold variety, are both coming back. About 3 or 4 weeks ago now, I had cut them back. I fertilized with some plant tone. We've had quite a bit of rain, so they've been real happy. And I'm just always happy when perennials in containers return. The fern is the last one to wake up, but they are generally slower to get going in the spring. Here I have a fire chief arborvitae that now has its spring color. So these go bronze in the winter, and then every spring they brighten up with this really pretty chartreuse color, and they get some orange and coral tips, and I really like this evergreen. And right in front of it, I have a drift of Pulminaria, also known as lungwort, that is currently in bloom. And I really love this perennial for a part shade location because not only does it get these really pretty dainty blooms in spring in shades of purple, blue, and pink, but once it's done blooming, the foliage gets much larger and it is a really pretty foliage plant. It's green with speckles of silver and just adds a bright spot to a shady corner of the garden. I also popped some allium bulbs in here last fall, some Mount Everest allium, which is a really large white globe-shaped bloom. So those should be blooming in the next few weeks. Cleaned up all the foliage on my lady's mantle, which is a really pretty perennial for also part shade. And not only is the foliage pretty, but when it blooms, it gets these really billowy baby's breath type flowers in a chartreuse color, which is really pretty and can coordinate nicely with so many perennials in the garden. And this beauty here is my Katsura Japanese maple. And there are Katsura trees, and there are also Katsura Japanese maples, which this one happens to be. And it is our first Japanese maple to leaf out in the spring. So this one should be fully leafed out in the next week or so. All of these Japanese maples are going to leaf out and look gorgeous in just a couple more weeks. But a couple of days ago, we planted a really beautiful conifer in this space, this beauty right here. And here is about 2 minutes of footage of us adding this conifer to the garden. It's a beautiful spring evening, so we decided to come outside and get a couple of things done. We have a really pretty tree picked out for this corner. It's a Hortsman Blue Atlas Cedar. How's it going over here?
It's going okay.
Yeah, so far so good.
I think it's going to be a nice spot for that tree.
I agree. This tree is so beautiful. I'm so excited to get it planted over here. This is a Hortsman Blue Atlas Cedar. Here's the tag. And we'll get into the specs in a little bit. So right now, George is trying to get the cage off of the root ball and the burlap off, and then I am going to work on prepping the soil. So we took some of the native soil and put it into the wheelbarrow, and I'm gonna mix that with the Coast of Maine Penobscot blend, which is a planting mix for trees, shrubs, and perennials. I'm going to add some of the biotone to the planting hole, and we're going to get this beautiful tree planted.
Now the fun part.
Yes, the fun part.
In the hole.
Maybe just roll it. Oh, there you go.
I just got to get this guy straight.
Yep.
It's not so straight right now.
Not right now. Did you decide which side you wanted it to face?
I do like this side as the front.
So every tree has a face, and he's already picked it out. So that side.
Just spin it a little bit.
Okay. You want me to put the camera on the tripod and help you out?
No, I'll get it. It's going to be tough for both of us to be kind of wrangling this thing.
Well, yeah, that's true. And it's a little spiky, right?
Yes, it is.
Well, after wrestling with this tree for a little while, we finally got it in the perfect spot, and I think it's going to look really beautiful in this corner. We planted it high. We do that with all of our trees. We want to make sure that the root flare is above the soil level, and now we just have to freshen up the mulch. And we got this done right before it got dark. We're losing light quick now, so all that's left to do for tonight is to water it. Let me share with you why I picked this tree. The traditional Blue Atlas cedar can get quite large, and I was looking for something more compact for this space. And the Hortsman Blue Atlas cedar is a dwarf, which means it has a slower growth rate of only 6 to 10 inches per year. And in about 10 years, it will reach a garden size of 8 feet in width and 12 feet in height, but it's very airy. So it's not a very dense evergreen, which is great because it still allows you to see around it, which I really like. And it also has this beautiful blue color. This is an Iseli conifer, and throughout the years I have planted several Iseli trees, such as a couple of my Japanese maples, as well as dwarf conifers in my garden. And I'm often asked where to find Iseli plants. So this season I'll be featuring several of their conifers in different planting projects to bring brand awareness and to share with you where to find their plants. You would go to their website, plug in your zip code, and it'll show a retailer near you that carries Iseli. Then once you get to the nursery, you just look for the triangle tag. And I'll leave a link to their retail locator down below. And right here in this woodland bed, we have this Golden Falls Japanese maple that we just planted last season, and we're noticing that it leaves out around the same time as our Katsura Japanese maple. And it also has that same beautiful orange, red, yellow coloring. You can see right behind them that all of my hellebore are still blooming. I really love hellebore. This perennial just blooms, and even when they're not at peak bloom, they still look beautiful. So they're going to look this way for quite a long time before the blooms finally start to fade and all of the new foliage pushes out. But if you don't have hellebore in your garden, I highly recommend them for some really early spring color. And down this way, I can see that some of the ground covers are really starting to fill in. This Jacob's ladder, which is a really pretty ferny perennial, is also starting to put on some buds and should be blooming soon. But currently, this magnolia here is starting to bloom, and this is an Ann magnolia. Now, this one has those tulip-shaped blooms and a really pretty pink with a hint of purple, and they are just gorgeous. It really adds such a nice pop of color in this woodland area back here. It gets just enough sun to bloom nicely. Here's another woodland bed that I have, and I wanted to show you just a couple of things. This is a beautiful ground cover called Geranium macarizum, and the variety is Bevans. And in just a few weeks, probably about mid to late May, this is going to have a bunch of small little pink blooms that the pollinators love. There'll be bees all over this. It is not aggressive. It has spread pretty slowly, and it's super easy to root. So I have grabbed chunks of this plant, given it to friends. So it's a really great ground cover if you're looking for something to take up volume, and it grows really well under the canopy of trees, which there could be a lot of root competition under trees, and it's done fabulous in this spot. Also has a really nice fragrance. I have some daffodils that are blooming in this area. The goal with this area was to have very deer-proof plants because the deer are always in this back woodland space. So I have some daffodils, I have some columbine or aquilegia, and just a couple of days ago, I planted some forget-me-nots that I started from seed because they are perennial, and if they don't bloom for me this year, they should bloom next year, and I think they'll look really pretty combined with the yellow daffodils. These are the tete-a-tete daffodils, which are the petite ones that are just now finishing their bloom, and I have some ground covers that are going to start filling in. And in the corner here, I have a bleeding heart that is in bloom, which they're beautiful. I have one in this corner and one in the opposite corner. And then in May, the lilac and the rhododendron will bloom. And right here by my raised bed garden, I have this pollinator bed with several perennials. And last season in spring, I planted 2 short stature species tulips called Tulipa tarda, and they're right here in the front of the bed, one here and one there. And what's great about these is that they're closed in the morning, they open in the afternoon and look really beautiful, but the deer and the rabbit don't touch them. This area is unprotected, tons of deer in this area all the time, and they haven't touched them. So if you're looking for something that blooms in spring, a tulip that's deer and rabbit resistant, check out the species tulips, and this variety is Tulipa tarda. Now we're in the front yard, and 2 seasons ago, so not last year, the year before, we planted this beautiful magnolia. This is a saucer magnolia called Solangiana, and it's an old-fashioned magnolia. I had seen this planted in front yards, and I went on the hunt for one because I thought it was lovely. It has a really beautiful large white bloom. You can see here, it's just starting to go over now, with this really pretty kind of rose color at the base. And these can get quite large, so I'm really looking forward to watching it grow over the years, and it should make a real impact in this front yard as it grows. And right here, I have a cherry tree. This is a Yoshino cherry, and our neighbor across the way there has a beautiful one that has been planted for several years, and it is such a stunner. So when I saw how beautiful they got, we had replaced a tree on this side of the garden. I knew that I wanted to add one of these, and it's looking really beautiful and in bloom, and the bees are always all over it. So it's a really beautiful spring tree to add, whether you add a Kwanzan cherry, which is usually pink, or the Yoshino, which is a more pale pink, almost white. Now we're in our front borders, and here I have a Fire Glow Japanese maple, which is just starting to unfurl and will be fully leafed out in just another week or 2. And in this area, I have succession blooming. So in the summer, these beds are filled to the brim with beautiful blooming perennials like phlox and coneflowers, some agastache, rudbeckia, and more. So they look really beautiful. But right now, my plan was to add color in early spring as well. So I planted lots of daffodils in this bed. And as the bed fills in, you won't even see the daffodil foliage, which is wonderful. This one here is called Delnishaw, which is a really pretty rough leaf variety that has creamy petals with a peach center. And I also have another variety mixed in, which is the traditional trumpet variety, and it's called Salome, which is a creamy outer petal with a golden yellow with a hint of orange in the center for the cup. And this really pretty shrub here is a candy corn Spyrhea. And the name is very fitting because it goes through several color changes throughout the season. Just a couple of weeks ago, it was red when it started to leaf out. Now it's orange, and then it's going to go yellow before turning a chartreuse color with clusters of pink blooms in summer. So a really great compact Spyrhea. This evergreen that I have back here, I often get questions about it. It is a weeping blue atlas cedar, and it's trained in a serpentine or S shape. And we just recently went through and trimmed it because in the spring, when it starts to push out growth, it gets all of these funky pointy branches. So we trimmed it back, and now it has its beautiful weeping shape back. This shrub here is my SEM False Spyrhea, and it has just finished leafing out, and it will continue to leaf out for a couple more weeks and has a really pretty vibrant color. This has like a fern foliage and shades of pink and yellow and green, and it's just a stunning shrub. Now, it does have a tendency to send runners and get a little bit crazy, so I do have to stay on top of it, but so far it's looked really beautiful, and if I stay on top of the runners, it's been pretty well behaved. My front porch pots are looking really pretty. We planted them up just a couple of days ago, and you can see that the saxifraga is all bloomed, and these violas that I started from seed are also looking beautiful and filling out. Now, I started these under grow lights in the basement on the 25th of January, and here we are, 3 months later, and they're just starting to bloom. So they take a long time to grow from seed, but they're very easy to start. And the alyssum, as well as the dusty miller, were all started from seed, very easy. And it's a great way to do affordable spring containers. And I also have tulips that are blooming. Now, these tulips are a little bit of a mistake because I wouldn't have normally planted such a bright red-orange colored tulip because they're just not my favorite. I tend to like cooler colors. But I bought a mix at the end of the season on clearance, so I kind of just bought whatever was left, and they were called the Spring Delights Mix. And on the card, which I have one and I'll show you, they look like they were going to be more of a lighter orange with a purple, pink, and yellow, but they turned out to be a really bright orange, which is really eye-catching actually when you drive up to see the front border with this pop of bright color. But these planters are looking really beautiful. You can see here the Black Devil pansies are also blooming beautifully. And these violas are really gorgeous. And then of course the sweet alyssum that I started from seed. This one is a super easy annual that likes cool weather and grows in about 6 weeks. These take to go from seed to bloom, which is wonderful. And they smell like honey, which is fun. And here in my main walkway border, I have this drift of tulips. Now you can see here in the mix how this red orange doesn't really coordinate with the yellow and the lavender pink purple that came in the blend. So as soon as these orange ones are done, I'm gonna pop them out because I treat tulips as annuals because I plant all of my gomphrena along this front walkway border for the summer months, and it looks really beautiful. Now keeping these tulips alive for the last couple of months has been a job because we've been getting a lot of rain this spring, which is great, but that means I have to reapply deer repellent every other day because tulips are like deer candy. And this here is a boulevard cypress. It is a topiary form, and we just recently went through and cleaned it up. I'm going to insert some footage, but this gets pretty unruly once it gets its new growth. It had gotten pretty shaggy, so we went through, pruned it nice and tight, and it looks a little bit brown now, but pretty soon it's going to push out its spring growth and get nice and blue and look a lot better. And here I have another candy corn Spyrhea. You can see it also has its really beautiful orange coloring. In this bed, that's pretty much it. I went through and I pruned and fertilized all of my knockout roses. And in just a few more weeks, all of the alliums will start blooming, the salvias and the nepitas, as well as the knockout roses, and it'll look really pretty. So again, in this border, I have a succession of colors starting in spring all the way through fall with different things blooming at different times. So in this bed here, I have a couple of peonies that are going to bloom in the next month. And a perennial that I added last season that I had grown in my pots is this candy tuft, which makes a really great front of the border perennial. It's low growing and it is loaded with clusters of white blooms. It has serious flower power. So I added 4 along the way here, and these are all perennials that I had used in planters that once I was done with them in planters, I went ahead and planted here in the landscape. This was the first one, and then last year I added 3 more, and they're just starting to bloom now. And right back here, I actually have a drift of 5 Bobo hydrangeas that in the last couple of years had burnt pretty badly with the amount of sun they get in this area. While they are rated for sun, I think that they would do a lot better in a part sun location. So I actually am going to dig them up this year, plant them in a spot in the backyard, and I'm going to replace them with, I believe, the little lime punch. So that's something that I'll be doing in the next couple of weeks. I've also been adding clusters of daffodils in this bed. So last year I added that grouping, and just this past fall I went ahead and added a whole cluster in this corner, which I think looks really pretty when you come down the driveway. These are the British Gamble that have creamy petals with a peach center in the trumpet. And right here at the top of our driveway, some of my phlox is already blooming, which is a little bit earlier than usual. My daffodils just finished blooming. I have two varieties planted here, Ice Kings and Ice Follies. And this is creeping phlox, which makes a really great ground cover. This is a tough spot because it is hot, it is dry, it's right by the road, and this phlox does great in this application. It's a light lavender purple. I'm not sure the variety, but it's a real pretty one. And here in my patio bed, we don't have a whole lot going on. Things are greening up nicely. My sweet flag ogon stays evergreen all season long. And I did have a lot of daffodils planted in here, but because this bed holds on to a lot of moisture, I've lost a lot of those bulbs over the years. So what I did in the fall was I planted a new type of bulb, Camasias, and Camasias can handle a little bit more moisture. So I have those just coming up now, and they should be blooming hopefully in time for our next garden tour. I still have some flags in this bed, and those are marking off the areas where I dropped some poppy seeds when there was still snow on the ground. And I left the flags there so that I wouldn't accidentally weed out the seedlings. Well, I started lots of beautiful plants under grow lights from seed this season, and you can see they're doing really well, and I'm starting to harden them off. So I have some champagne hollyhocks here, some ranunculus that I will be planting out this weekend. I have some, this is Rudbeckia, the Sahara Rudbeckia that I grew last season that was absolutely stunning. So I have a whole lot more of that this year. Some delphiniums, and this is the best my delphiniums have ever looked grown from seed. So this year they're doing really well. I have some more Dusty Miller, which you can see the foliage is so gorgeous in this silvery gray color. This is the new look Dusty Miller. And look at all of these snapdragons. This is the Madam Butterfly snapdragons. So these are also getting planted this weekend. And I just picked up some spring veggies at a local greenhouse. I have some kale and some collards, as well as lettuce and parsley. So I'll get those planted out, as well as some sweet peas, both the flowers and the snacking peas, pretty soon. Well, this was the first of many garden tours that I hope to do this season. I always love to share what my garden looks like with you so that you can get inspiration on different plant combinations and things that you might be able to plant in your own garden. So let me know in the comments what's blooming in your April garden, and are there any plants that you're hoping to add this season? Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will catch you in the next one.